Well, hello everybody, Roger here, and welcome to my channel, Roger's Reads. So, beginning today, I'm going to start doing something different. I'm going to start a weekly video called Saturday Book Chat, in which I discuss all of the books that I've read during that week and what I'm currently reading at the moment. Last week when I did March's wrap-ups, I ended up having to divide it into 3 sections or 3 parts because usually I end up reading about 12 to 15 books a month, so it can be kind of unwieldy. So I thought instead I'll just break it down into weekly videos. So hopefully that will go a little smoother. We'll see. We'll give it a go. So, on to this week's book chat. So, I've been slowly working my way through the Lambda finalist lists. I actually think I have 3 of them on my TBR list for April, and this past week I read 2 of them alone. So the first one I read was The Sidekicks by Will Kostakis. The Sidekicks is in the young adult category of the Lambda Literary Awards finalists for 2018. And I actually did an entire full review of this book on my channel, which you can check out if the book sounds interesting. So the story is set in northern Sydney and revolves around 3 friends, Ryan, Harley, and Miles, whose good friend Isaac has just died. Now, the thing with these 3 is that they are not really friends with each other, but all 3 of them were close friends with Isaac. In fact, the 3 of them don't really like each other all that much. The only thing that they have in common is their grief over Isaac's death. Now, what follows then is an exposition of each boy's reflections and flashbacks about the relationship to Isaac and the relationship to each other. So the book is broken down into 3 sections, each told from a different boy's perspective. Each boy section starts out with the boy being called to the school deputy's office, where they each are told the news that their friend Isaac was killed when he dove into the water at a party and hit his head on a boat. Now, I enjoyed the fact that each section built upon the previous section, so we saw a nice progression as we moved from one character's point of view to the next. Each of the 3 sections also had a markedly different writing style based on that character's personality, and Isaac's death affected each one of them differently, which kind of illustrates how grief affects all of us in different ways. I thought that this was a gem of a book, and with a beautiful and moving ending. I ended up loving it and all 3 of the characters, and I ended up giving it 4.5 stars. So the second book I read last week was We Now Return to Regular Life by Martin Wilson. I also did a full review of this book on this channel, so you can check it out if you'd like to know more. So this is another book that made the Lambda Literary Awards list of finalists in the young adult category. So this book follows Sam Walsh, who was abducted when he was 11 years old. So when the story begins, Sam has been missing for 3 years and assumed by most people to be dead. His childhood friend, Josh, with whom Sam had earlier been bicycling that day, was the last person to have seen him. His older sister, Beth, who assumed Sam was dead, is dealing with some heavy guilt issues from the day of his disappearance. So one day, Beth receives a phone call from her mother, and her mother tells her that Sam has been found and he's come home. Now, Beth, of course, wants to know what happened to Sam, but her family refuses to allow anyone to discuss the topic in order to allow Sam to heal on his own terms. All that we know is that he was kidnapped and held captive for 3 years by a man named Russell. Now, it's obvious in the story that Sam is desperate to talk about what happened to him, but this isn't in conflict with his family, who can't bear to hear it. So in this way, instead of supporting Sam, they actually end up pushing him away. So we really get a feeling for Sam's struggle to find some sort of normalcy in his life after 3 harrowing years of abuse by his kidnapper as he tries to get his life back. So Sam ends up rekindling his friendship with Josh and slowly begins to confide in him about some of the events and the things that he went through during the 3 years of his captivity. Josh is also holding on to a horrible secret about that day, and because of that, he's been plagued with pain and confusion since that day. But since their reunion, Josh and Sam begin to grow closer, and Josh finds himself falling in love with his childhood friend. So the rest of the book alternates between Josh and Beth's point of view as the story slowly begins to unfold. And through their eyes, we not only see their struggles, but also experience the difficulty and challenges that Sam is facing as he tries to integrate himself once again into everyday life. So, all in all, I ended up loving this story. It's a powerful tale packed with emotion. I can definitely understand how this book ended up being a Lambda Literary Awards finalist, as it's the kind of book that will definitely stay with you for a long time to come. At least it probably will with me. So I ended up giving this book 4.5 stars. So the last book I want to talk about is entitled Cloaked in Shadow by Ben Alderson. Now, this book is by a fellow booktuber, and this is his debut novel, from what I understand. I don't have a physical copy of this book, as I read it on ebook. Now, I've been watching Ben's videos for quite a while now, and I was very excited when I learned that he was publishing a novel, especially once I learned what the novel was about. So the story follows a young elven man named Zachariah, who goes by Zach, who is taken to the elven capital of Thessalina, where he is forced into King Delier's new army of shapeshifters. Now, the kicker here is that Zach is not a shapeshifter. In truth, Zach doesn't know what he is, but he does have magic. He knows that, but he does his best to hide the magic because it's the kind of magic that no other elf has. And Zach is well aware that he probably needs to keeps this hidden from everyone around him. So fearing that the king and others will discover Zach's strange magic powers, he attempts to escape the castle, and in the process meets the king's handsome son, Prince Hadrian. Now, Hadrian later agrees to take Zach under his wing and train him for an upcoming duel. Now, we soon discover that war is brewing between the elven nations, with peace between the kingdoms beginning to crumble apart. There's also something dark and mysterious going on within the kingdom, as we learn that not everyone is who we think that they are. The book is a fast-paced, part fantasy, part adventure, part LGBT romance, with plenty of suspense, intrigue, and twists and turns. I felt that the characters were well fleshed out, and the beautifully written and vivid descriptions and stunning imagery were especially evocative. I've read many LGBT paranormal-themed romances before, such as vampires, werewolves, ghosts. I think there even was one about between ghouls. But I do believe that this is the first gay elf book I've read. Now, the romance was sweet and didn't dominate the story once the characters started getting involved. I also was happy that this wasn't an insta-love type of romance, but rather was quite a slow burn. So this book really had it all. Elves, shifters, elemental magic, healers, empaths, battles, evil schemes, and even a handsome prince. Now, I will warn you that the book takes off to a slow start. I personally found the first 2 chapters a little bit on the boring side, as they mainly consisted of Zach sitting in the wagon on his way to Thessalina and observing his fellow passengers in the countryside. But once you get past that, the book really begins to take off, and from that point on, the action is non-stop. This was a compelling story with a unique plot, snappy dialogue, fun creatures, and an interesting cast of characters that kept me turning the page until the end. So I felt that Ben did an excellent job with the world building in this book, and I felt that Zach especially was a complex and multifaceted character. I enjoyed Ben's writing style and look forward to reading more books by him, and I ended up giving this read 3 stars. So those were the only 3 books that I read this week. I'm still listening to Thunderhead on Audible, which is the sequel to the book Scythe by Neil Shusterman. And I'm really loving Thunderhead so far. I probably have about 8 hours left to go. It's a relatively long book, but I'll probably do a whole review of the book once I finish it, as well as mention it on my next Saturday book chat. So I think that wraps it up for this week. Thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you in the next video. Bye-bye.